My name is Teresa Myers. I am 33 years old, and the moment I stood up at that dinner table with a steady smile on my face, every single person in that room understood that nothing in our family would ever be the same again. My husband had just announced in front of both our families that his mother was moving into my house, the house my parents saved 20 years to buy, the house with my maiden name on the deed, the house that was purchased outright in cash before I was ever married. He had already given her a key. He had already set up a bedroom for her, and he had already quietly moved $23,000 of our joint money through a company that did not exist to a savings account in his mother's name. He smiled at me across the table like he was waiting for applause, like the hard part was already finished, and I would simply go along with it the way I had gone along with everything else. What happened over the next 45 minutes would cost him his marriage, cost his mother her dream of a free home, and cost his sister the comfortable arrangement she had been counting on. But to understand how we got to that table, and why I was ready for every single moment of what followed, I need to take you back 6 months to when the pieces of this story first started moving into place. I work as a nurse practitioner at a hospital in Virginia, 3 night shifts a week, 12 hours each. I love what I do. There is something about being the calm in someone else's storm that fits me, that feels like the thing I was built for. But 12-hour nights do not leave much room for anything else, so I became the person who handled everything at home as well. Bills, grocery runs, meal prep for the week, scheduling oil changes, remembering dentist appointments. If it needed doing, I did it, and I had made a kind of peace with that arrangement over the years because I was organised, I was capable, and if I did not handle something, it simply did not get handled. My husband Grant worked as a regional sales manager for a building materials company, good income, decent hours, and a natural charm that allowed him to walk into a room full of strangers and leave with 3 new friends and a lunch invitation. I married him when I was 28. He was 30. We had a good first year, quiet, comfortable, the kind of beginning that makes you believe you chose correctly. And then there was the house. 3 bedrooms, 1.5 baths in a quiet subdivision just south of town, a maple tree in the front yard, a back patio where I drank coffee at 6 in the morning before the rest of the street woke up. It was more than I ever thought I would have at 28. My parents bought it outright. No mortgage, paid in full, deed in my name alone, Teresa Howerin, my maiden name, not Teresa Myers. They handed me the keys at the closing table, and my mother cried so hard the notary offered her a tissue. 2 weeks before my wedding, my father had slid a manila envelope across the kitchen table. Inside was the deed, and a notarized gift letter dated that same week that read, in precise legal language, "This property is gifted solely to Teresa June Howerin as her sole and separate property." My father looked at me and said, "This is yours, Ree, not his. Not theirs, yours. Keep the paperwork somewhere safe." I thanked him, hugged him, and privately thought he was being overly cautious, the way older men who have spent decades fixing other people's problems tend to be. I filed the deed and the gift letter in a fireproof lockbox in my closet and did not think about them again for 5 years. Father Warren spent 35 years as a plumber, not the kind who runs a fleet of vans, but the kind who crawls under houses at 6 in the morning with a wrench and a flashlight, comes home smelling like copper pipe and PVC glue, eats dinner, and then drives out again for an emergency call at 10 at night. He drove the same truck for 14 years. My mother June worked the register at a grocery store for 22 years. They were not rich. They were disciplined, and every extra dollar they ever earned went into a savings account they never touched. That is the kind of love my parents gave me. Not loud, not showy, just 20 years of showing up and putting something away. Grant was easy to love at first. He remembered small things. My coffee order, the song I played on repeat through nursing school, the fact that I hated cilantro. He sent flowers to the hospital on my birthday and called my parents Mum and Dad within 6 months of us dating. But charm has a shelf life when it is built on performance rather than principle, and by the 2nd year of our marriage, I started noticing a pattern. Every time Vivian called, that is Grant's mother, he dropped everything. If we were mid-conversation, he would hold up one finger and answer. If we were at dinner, he would step outside. Every major decision ran through her first. New couch. Let me ask Mum what she thinks. Vacation dates. Mum wanted us to visit that week. I brought it up carefully one evening. Grant, do you think your mother has a lot of influence on our decisions? He stared at me like I had insulted something sacred. She's my mother, Teresa. That summer, Vivian began visiting on weekends. Grant would invite her Friday afternoon, and she would stay through Sunday. By the third weekend in a row, I realised he had not asked me once. He simply told me, "Mum's coming Friday." I said, "Grant, this is my house. I'd appreciate a heads up before you invite anyone to stay." He frowned. "She's my mother. She doesn't need an invitation." I looked at him steadily. "In my house, everyone needs an invitation, including your mother." Vivian Myers was 63, retired, and she carried a wound she never let anyone forget. 23 years earlier, her husband had left her with 2 children and a custody agreement, and she had walked away from the divorce with 2 suitcases and nothing else because she had no lawyer, and he did. She lost the house, the car, and the retirement account in a settlement that was over before she understood what was happening. I knew this story because Grant had told it to me on our 3rd date, and Vivian retold it at every Thanksgiving. It was her origin story, and she wore it like armour. By the 3rd year of our marriage, Vivian's visits had begun to look less like visits and more like inspections. She started commenting on the house as though she were the project manager. "This kitchen would look better with new cabinets. That wall colour is too dark." Then she stopped asking entirely. I came home from a night shift one Tuesday and found new curtains in the living room, cream lace replacing the navy linen ones my mother and I had chosen together. Vivian told me brightly that she had bought them with her own money, and I should consider it a gift. I asked Grant about the curtains. He sighed. "Mum just wanted to help. Relax." The next Saturday, Vivian and I were alone in the kitchen, and she said the first sentence I should have recognised as a declaration of war. "You married into this family," she said, drying her hands on a dish towel. "The house came with you." I put my own dish towel down. "The house didn't come with anyone, Vivian. My parents bought it for me." She smiled, walked into the living room and said nothing else. She was not arguing. She was stating a belief, and beliefs, I was learning, are considerably harder to fight than arguments because they do not require evidence, and they do not respond to facts. Grant's younger sister, Courtney, was 28 years old and operated like someone who borrows your umbrella and returns it broken without apologising. She worked part-time at a hair salon, lived with Vivian in a 1-bedroom apartment 20 minutes from our house, and arrived at my home the way weather arrives, without announcement and with consequences. "I'm just dropping by," reliably turned into 4 hours on my couch, my refrigerator half empty, and a wet towel on the bathroom floor. She flipped through my mail on the counter without thinking. She tried on my jackets and forgot to put them back. One afternoon, I came home to find Courtney in my home office, the room next to the master bedroom where I kept my laptop, my patient reference materials, and my personal documents, sitting in my chair with her feet on my desk, scrolling her phone. "I just needed a quiet spot," she said. Grant had apparently told her she could use any room. I called Grant immediately. He said it was our house, not just mine. I hung up, walked back to the office, and told Courtney directly that the room was off-limits to everyone. That evening, I installed a keyed lock on the office door myself, paid for it myself, and kept both keys in my screwdriver drawer. Grant noticed. "You locked the office." "Seriously?" "Seriously," I said. "Then stop letting people walk through it without asking." He did not respond. A quiet Grant, I was learning, was considerably more dangerous than an angry one because a quiet Grant was planning. 4 days after the lock went up, I found a receipt in the mailbox from a locksmith shop. 3 copies of the house key, charged to Grant's debit card. He had given Vivian a copy without telling me. I held the receipt until Grant came in from the garage, showed it to him and said, "You gave a key to my house to your mother without telling me." He said, "Stop calling it my house, that we were married, that it was our house." By 4 o'clock that afternoon, every exterior lock on the house had been rekeyed. New keys, 2 copies, both mine, one on my keychain and one in the fireproof lockbox with the deed. The next afternoon, Vivian drove over for her usual visit, stood at the front door for 3 minutes, turning a key that no longer worked, then called Grant. I heard his phone ring from the living room. I heard him say, "What do you mean it doesn't work?" And then he looked at me. "Did you change the locks?" "Yes." "If she needs to come over, she can knock like a guest." He went quiet, picked up his jacket and drove to Vivian's apartment. I sat on the couch alone in my quiet house and felt something I had not felt in months: ownership. But I could feel the ground beginning to shift because Grant was not the type to lose quietly. He was the type to find another way in. 2 weeks of cold silence followed, Grant sleeping in the guest room, barely speaking. Then one evening he came home with a small white box. "A smart lock," he said. "Yale. We could open the door from our phones. No more physical keys to fight about." I looked at the box and thought carefully. Grant's worst moves always looked reasonable on the surface. "Fine," I said, "but I would be the primary administrator and no one else would get access without my approval." Of course he agreed. He installed it that weekend. I set up the app, confirmed myself as primary administrator, Grant as secondary user. 2 users total. I checked 3 times. I thought I had it covered. What I did not account for was that Grant had administrative rights as well. And administrative rights included the ability to add new users without sending any notification to the other administrator. He could add anyone he wanted, and I would not know unless I manually checked the user list. I did not check for 2 weeks because I was pulling extra shifts. One of the ICU nurses was on maternity leave, and I had volunteered to cover. 3 night shifts had become 4, 4 had become 5. Grant had been waiting for exactly that kind of exhaustion, because tired people do not check apps, and Grant was counting on it. I came home after a double night shift, 24 hours on my feet, 2 codes and 1 difficult family conversation in the ICU, and all I wanted was a shower and 8 hours of silence. I opened the front door and smelled fresh coffee in my kitchen. Courtney was asleep on the living room couch, wrapped in one of my throw blankets. My laptop was on the coffee table, moved from my locked office. A plate with toast crumbs sat on the arm of the sofa. The refrigerator had been raided, leftover pasta gone, half the deli turkey, both yogurts. I stood in my own living room and felt like a stranger in it. Then I checked the smart lock app. Courtney Myers unlocked front door, 2:13 p.m. I had never given Courtney access. I called Grant. He picked up on the 4th ring, groggy. When I asked how Courtney had access to the lock, he paused, then said she had asked him and it was just for convenience. I confirmed on the phone. "Did you add her to my lock without telling me after I specifically said no one else gets access?" "Yes," he said. "She's family." I opened the app right there in the living room and removed Courtney's access while she blinked awake on the couch asking what was happening. I told her she was in my house without my permission. She left 20 minutes later, barefoot, shoes in hand, texting furiously. I reset the app settings, removed Grant's administrative privileges entirely, and set myself as the sole administrator. 1 admin, 1 authority. No exceptions. Grant gave me 3 days of silence. Then the campaign started. He sat me down with a look that was supposed to read as hurt, but landed closer to strategy. Told me his mother had cried all night because I had humiliated Courtney. Told me I was tearing the family apart, that my parents had poisoned me. When I pointed out that my parents had said nothing about his family, he stood up and said, "Fine, be the gatekeeper. Be the warden." He slept in the guest room and then, without a word, stopped contributing to the joint bills entirely. The financial disappearance was not gradual. It was all at once. The automatic transfer from Grant's paycheck into our shared checking account simply stopped. I noticed after 2 weeks because I was the one who tracked every line item on the statement. I pulled up 3 months of records online, and the pattern was immediate. Grant's agreed contribution had not come through since April. 3 months. No transfer, no explanation, no mention. I printed the statements, highlighted the missing deposits, and found Grant in the garage. When I showed him the papers, he said he had been paying for his mother's things, a few hundred here and there. I held up the statements. "This isn't a few hundred, Grant. This is over $5,000 missing in 3 months. He looked at the papers and then away. His jaw was tight and his hands were in his pockets, which was what Grant always did when he was lying. I waited until Grant left for work the following morning. Then I sat at the kitchen table with my laptop and every bank statement I could access going back 8 months. It took me 40 minutes to find the pattern. Starting in January, there were recurring charges to a vendor called Myers Home Solutions. The amounts varied: $2,600 in January, $3,200 in February, $4,800 in March. Each charge was categorized as home improvement contractor. I had never heard of Myers Home Solutions. I opened a browser and searched. No website, no Google listing, no physical address, just a Virginia LLC filing with the State Corporation Commission, registered agent Grant A. Myers, filed 8 months earlier. I got up, walked through the house and looked at every room. The roof Grant supposedly had repaired. No new shingles, no evidence of any work. The hardwood floors he had allegedly had refinished. Same scuff marks I had been looking at for 5 years. The plumbing repairs. My father had done those himself last spring for free on a Sunday afternoon. Every single invoice was for work that had never happened. Every dollar had gone somewhere I could not trace from a bank statement alone. I did not confront Grant that evening. I made dinner, listened to him talk about a difficult client, asked about his day. And after he went to bed, I opened a new browser tab, typed Divorce Attorney Roanoke, Virginia, and started reading reviews. 3 days after I found the fake company, I found the bank statement. Grant had a small desk in the corner of the guest room with a locked bottom drawer. He'd forgotten I still had the spare key from years earlier when we shared everything. I opened the drawer during my lunch break, on a day Grant was in Richmond for a sales meeting. Inside were LLC operating documents, a checkbook for an account I had never seen, and one bank statement. The statement was from a different bank than ours. The account holder was Vivian M. Myers. Balance as of the most recent statement, $19,400. I scanned the transaction history. Deposits arrived like clockwork every month between the 15th and 20th. Source: electronic transfer from Myers Home Solutions LLC, January 2600. February 3200. March 4800. April 3400. May 2900. June 4200. July 2300. Total $23,400. Every dollar matched the charges on our joint account. Every deposit corresponded to an invoice for renovation work that had never been performed on a house Grant did not own. I held that bank statement for 3 full minutes. 3 minutes was all it took to decide the rest of my life. I photographed every page, the statement, the LLC documents, the checkbook, and sent everything to my personal email immediately. Then I placed everything back in the exact position I had found it, same stack order, same angle, locked the drawer, and returned the key to the screwdriver drawer where it had always lived. I drove back to the hospital for my afternoon shift, parked in the garage, sat in my car for 5 minutes with both hands on the steering wheel. I was not crying. I was calculating. Confrontation without evidence is just a fight, and I was not interested in fighting. I was interested in winning. Ellen Park's office was on the 2nd floor of a brick building on Church Avenue. She was 45, direct, with the kind of calm that comes from spending 2 decades untangling other people's marriages. I sat across from her desk during my lunch break the next day and laid everything out. The deed, the notarized gift letter from my parents, 6 months of joint account statements with the Myers Home Solutions charges highlighted, and the photographs of Vivian's bank statement. Ellen put on her reading glasses, went through each document without speaking for 5 full minutes. Then she looked up. The house is your separate property. The deed is in your maiden name. The gift letter is notarized and dated before the marriage. He has 0 claim. I exhaled for what felt like the first time in months. She explained that the fake invoices were dissipation of marital assets. He had moved joint funds to his mother through a fabricated company, and a forensic accountant could trace every dollar. She gave me a name on a sticky note. Sandra Okafor, forensic accountant specializing in divorce cases. Call her today, Ellen said. She'll need your bank records, the LLC filing, and anything else you can provide. Timeline is about 3 weeks for a case this straightforward. The trail isn't hidden, it's just unexamined. Then she slid a second piece of information across the desk. I can have the divorce petition drafted by end of week. You file when you're ready. But Teresa, and do not tip your hand. Do not confront him. Do not change any account access. Let the forensic work finish first. I nodded. 3 weeks. I needed to keep everything normal for 3 weeks. I shook her hand, walked downstairs, bought a sandwich I did not eat, and drove back to work. The hardest part was not finding the evidence. The hardest part was sitting across from Grant every single night, eating dinner, asking about his day, watching him lie to my face with complete confidence, while I held the proof in my bag and counted down the days. 21 days, I counted every one of them. I went to work. I came home, I made pasta on Tuesdays and chicken on Thursdays. I asked Grant about his sales numbers. He started warming up during those 3 weeks, eating dinner at the table again instead of the guest room, making small talk, even bringing me coffee one morning before my shift. He thought the fight about keys and locks and access had burned itself out, and I had accepted the new arrangement. I let him think exactly that. Sandra Okafor worked from a small office on Franklin Road and was thorough in a way that reminded me of the attending physicians I admired most. No drama, just precision. She pulled the LLC's full filing history from the State Corporation Commission, cross-referenced every invoice amount with corresponding withdrawals from the joint account, and matched every deposit date to Vivian's savings account. Her findings were worse than I had anticipated. Beyond the $23,400 in fabricated invoices, Grant had opened a credit card in the LLC's name with a balance of $6,200. Charges included a laptop, a leather recliner, 2 months of a storage unit rental and a flat-screen television. None of those items were anywhere in our house. Sandra laid it out plainly. 11 fabricated invoices, each corresponding to renovation work that was never performed at our residential address. Total misappropriated from the joint account, $23,000. $400 plus $6,200 in undisclosed credit card debt linked to the LLC. She handed me the report, 14 pages, stapled, tabbed with exhibits. I held it in my lap and felt its weight, not the paper, but the truth of it, the whole truth, documented, verified, and ready. Thursday evening, Grant sat down at the kitchen table with the serious expression he usually reserved for sales presentations. "Teresa, I've been thinking. Mum's apartment lease is up next month. I want her to move in with us permanently." He said it the way someone presents a finished decision, not a question, not a discussion, just a conclusion he had already reached and was now announcing. I kept my voice completely neutral. "That's a big decision." "It's the right decision," he said. "Does your mother know?" He smiled, the first genuine smile I had seen from him in weeks. "She's already started packing. Already packing." Before he had asked me. Before I had agreed. Before anyone had consulted the person whose name was on the deed. I repeated the words slowly. "Already packing! Before you even asked me." He leaned forward. "Teresa, you married into this family. This house is big enough. Don't make this about ownership." There was the line again, his mother's words coming out of his mouth. I looked at him across the table, thought about the 14-page report in my bag, thought about Ellen Park's advice. Do not tip your hand. And then I said something that genuinely surprised him. "Okay, let's talk about it at dinner. I want both families there. Your mum, Courtney, my parents, all of us at the table. If we're going to make a big family decision, we should do it together." His face lit up. That's a great idea." He went to bed happy that night. I stayed up until 1 in the morning going through Sandra's report page by page. Friday morning I called my father. "Dad, I need the original deed and the gift letter, and I need you and Mom at dinner tomorrow night." Silence. Then, "Is everything okay, Ree?" "It will be. I promise. Just bring the documents." He did not ask anything else. That was my father. When his daughter asked for something specific, he delivered it without interrogation, without fuss, just quiet, reliable action. At noon, I had my final meeting with Ellen, who handed me the draft divorce petition and a motion to preserve separate property. "Saturday night," she said. "You tell him in front of witnesses. Let his reaction be his reaction. You stay calm, you state facts, and you leave the emotions to him." I drove home with 3 things in the passenger seat: Ellen's petition, Sandra's report, and the deed and gift letter in a manila folder thick with paper and consequence. That evening I made chicken masala, Vivian's favourite, because there is something quietly satisfying about cooking a beautiful meal for someone who is about to have a very bad evening. Saturday. I was up at 6. Cleaned the house, set the dining table with the good plates. Mine. Not Vivian's china. Polished the glasses. Put fresh flowers on the sideboard and cooked all day. Grant hovered, cheerful and unhelpful. "Mom is so excited," he said around noon, sampling the sauce with a spoon. Vivian arrived at 5, carrying a box of her own china wrapped in cloth napkins, dishes from her old house in Salem, the nicest things she had kept from that life. Courtney followed with 2 overnight bags. I thought I'd stay the weekend since we're celebrating, she said, dropping the bags by the stairs. My parents arrived at 5:30. My father carried a brown envelope tucked under his arm. My mother carried a pecan pie and a face that said she already knew something was wrong. 30 years of reading people at a checkout counter had given her instincts like that. 7 people around a table meant for 8. Dinner was pleasant. Vivian complimented the marsala 3 times. Courtney asked for seconds. Grant refilled wine glasses and made a joke about needing a bigger table. My parents ate quietly, my father chewing slowly, my mother watching everything. After the plates were cleared and coffee was poured, Grant tapped his glass with a fork. The room went still. He stood up, one hand on the table, the other resting on the back of Vivian's chair. I have an announcement. Mum's lease is ending next month, and Teresa and I have agreed that she should move in with us permanently. Vivian clasped her hands together. Her eyes were shining. Courtney clapped twice. This is happening, Grant continued. We're going to convert the study into a sitting room for Mum. Give her some real space. And Courtney, you're welcome here any time. I've already ordered a new key set for the front lock. He looked at me with his salesman's smile and that confident tilt of his chin. Right, babe? Every pair of eyes in the room turned to me. Vivian expectant. Courtney grinning. Grant already celebrating. My father still as stone. My mother holding her coffee cup with both hands. I set my napkin on the table, pushed my chair back, stood up, and smiled. Not a forced smile, not a nervous one, but the kind that comes from being genuinely ready for a moment you have been building toward for 3 weeks. Grant, I said. My voice was even and steady. The same voice I use in the ICU when a family is falling apart and someone needs to hold the room together. I'm glad everyone is here, because there's something I need to say about this house. I reached behind my chair, took the manila folder from my bag and set it on the table. The room was so quiet I could hear the refrigerator humming in the kitchen. I held up the deed. This is the deed to this house, recorded with the City Circuit Court. The owner listed is Teresa June Howerin, my maiden name. Not Teresa Myers. Not Grant and Teresa. Just me. I set the deed down and picked up the gift letter. This is the notarized gift letter from my parents, dated 2 weeks before our wedding. It states, and I'll read the key line, this property is gifted solely to Teresa June Howerin as her sole and separate property. I looked at my father. Dad, would you like to confirm? Warren cleared his throat. Every word. Your mother and I saved for that house for 20 years. We bought it for you, not for anyone else at this table. Vivian's face had gone completely white. Her hands were flat on the table, pressing down like she was trying to hold herself in place. Grant stepped forward. Teresa, this isn't the time. You chose the time, Grant. You stood up in front of both families and announced your mother was moving into my house. A house you don't own. A house with only my name on the title. I paused and let that settle. Then I reached for Sandra Okafor's report, 14 pages tabbed with exhibits. Over the past 8 months, Grant created a company called Myers Home Solutions LLC, a company with no employees, no office, and no clients. He billed our joint checking account 11 times for renovation work on this house. Renovation work that was never performed? I read the figures calmly, like reading vitals. $3,200 for a roof repair that never happened. I looked at the ceiling. Same roof. $4,800 for hardwood floor refinishing. I looked at the floors. Same scuff marks. $2,600 for plumbing work. I looked at my father. Dad, you fixed the plumbing yourself last spring, didn't you? Warren nodded. A Sunday afternoon. Took me 3 hours, free of charge. Total billed to our joint account through this company, I said. $23,400. Every dollar deposited into a savings account at Cardinal Community Credit Union. I looked at Vivian. In your name. The colour drained from Vivian's face in stages, like watching a tide go out. Grant's mouth was moving, but nothing was coming out. Courtney looked at her brother with wide eyes. What company, Grant? What is she talking about? He did not answer. He was staring at the report in my hands like he could not decide whether to deny it or run. I explained the rest of the room clearly, and without raising my voice. I had reviewed our joint checking account as a co-holder, found $23,000 missing, and hired a forensic accountant. The same kind professional that divorce courts rely on every day. Divorce courts, Grant said, and his voice cracked on the word. Teresa. Vivian's hand slammed the table so hard the plates rattled. Grant, tell her she's wrong. Tell her this is a misunderstanding. He looked at his mother, then at me. He said nothing. Courtney pushed back slowly from the table. Wait, the LLC. Is that why you asked me to sign that form last month? You said it was for your work. Grant snapped at her to be quiet. My mother said evenly from across the table. Don't talk to her like that. It was the first time June had spoken all evening. Grant exploded, full volume, face red, the salesman entirely gone. I did not raise my voice to meet his. I did not need to. When he ran out of breath, I said, $23,000 is not some money, Grant. It is what my father earns in 5 months of crawling under houses fixing other people's pipes. Warren flinched. June put her hand over his. Then I looked at Vivian directly and said the last thing I needed to say to her in that room. I know what happened to you 23 years ago. I know you lost your house. I know Grant was 12 and scared, and Courtney was too young to understand. And I am genuinely sorry that no one was there to help you fight for what was yours. Vivian's chin trembled. But what happened to you does not give you the right to take what belongs to me. My parents worked 20 years for this house. My father crawled under other people's homes for 3 decades, so I could have one of my own. My mother stood behind a register for 22 years without complaining once. And you and Grant tried to take it with keys and fake invoices and $23,000 that did not belong to either of you. Courtney picked up her purse, walked to the front door and opened it without a word. Grant grabbed a wine glass and threw it against the wall. It missed me by a foot and shattered red wine spreading across the white tablecloth and the wall behind me. I did not flinch. It's over, Grant, I said. I've spoken with a family law attorney. I'm filing for divorce Monday morning. Vivian walked out. Grant followed. Courtney was already in the car with the engine running. The front door closed behind them and the house went quiet. My mother asked from across the table very softly if I was okay. I sat down. My legs were steady, but my hands had started to tremble. The adrenaline wearing off the way it does after a code in the ICU when the patient is finally stable and your body remembers to shake. My father got up from his chair, walked to the broken china plate that had slipped from Vivian's shaking hands as she left, knelt down with his 2 bad knees, and started picking up the pieces one by one. My mother joined him. They did not say anything. They just worked, quietly, together, without being asked. The way they had always worked. Warren dropped the pieces in the trash, straightened up, put both hands on the counter and looked at me across the kitchen. I knew there was a reason I put the deed in your maiden name. I almost laughed. Monday morning at 8:30 sharp, I was at the Circuit Court Clerk's office with Ellen Park. The petition and the property motion were filed. Grant was served at his office on Tuesday. His attorney reviewed the documentation and advised him not to contest the property claim. The deed was clean, the gift letter was notarized. I had never added Grant to the title, and every property expense had been paid from my personal account. There was nothing to dispute. Grant moved out that same week. The divorce was granted 9 months after that Saturday dinner. I kept the house. I kept my career. I kept the maple tree my father had planted in the front yard the day I moved in. The first weekend alone was quiet in a way I had not felt in years, not empty quiet but clean quiet, the kind that comes after you have stopped holding your breath. I walked through every room. I stripped Vivian's floral bedding from the guest room and put back my own white sheets. I took down the cream lace curtains and rehung the navy linen ones my mother and I had chosen together. They still fit. I opened the smart lock app, removed all users, changed the master code, and set myself as sole administrator. 1 user, 1 code, 1 key. That afternoon I drove to the garden centre and bought a flat of marigolds. I planted them along the front walkway in the October sun, with my hands in the dirt my parents had paid for. When I finished, I took a photo of the front of the house and texted it to my father with 1 line. I kept it, Dad. He did not reply for an hour. Then a single thumbs up. And 1 word, good.